So we're going to build a Vue.js site with a Python Flask API backend, and we're going to compare the features of both implementations because they're very similar. Maybe not in practice, but a lot of the code that you're going to see can be not necessarily shared, but there are equivalents on both sides that are very useful and intuitive, no matter which side you're coming from. So Python, let's get started with a Python backend first. Brand new Python project. First things first, we'll go ahead and just let's do pyorl back. And we'll create a requirements file, all that good stuff. Pull it out here. We can have our app.py. And we can go ahead and pip install fast API. Pipe. Pi install. They actually put that on the Raspberry Pi. If you're not familiar with fast API, it is a micro framework that is built on Pydantic and Starlet. And it provides a number of really interesting features that are modern Python features that we can use. Namely, it really takes advantage of the Python type annotations and function annotations. And it's actually able to use this both for validation and providing auto documentation, which is really great in terms of long-term maintenance, and removes a handful of libraries. So just to get into it, let's go to the basic tutorial. Okay, already pip installed. We can just copy this wholesale into our app, and we're not going to get too complicated with this setup for our purposes today. The other thing that we're going to need, pip install. Oh, I'm going to keep forgetting to switch back and forth between these two. So why don't I do this? 1, 2, and because my screen is huge, I'll make it more readable for everyone. Okay. So this is our basic quick start guide right here. If you've used any other Python backend micro framework before, this is going to look very familiar. You could probably you could replace Fast API with Flask at this point, and it's going to look more or less the same. Not exactly, but more or less the same. You'll notice we already do have one important difference here. We have async def, which one of the other nice things with Fast API is it is asynchronous out of the box. Starlet runs on Unicorn, which is also an async version of a Whiskey app like Unicorn. So we are going to need Unicorn as well. There it is. So pip install Unicorn. And then to run it, we have our Unicorn. We'll do app and reload, or app /app:/app. So Unicorn, our file name, and then just be extra, to clarify even further, app is also the name of our actual server instance in the code. And we'll put it on reload so we have automatic reload. It is now running, application startup complete. If we go to our localhost 8000, you will see we have message hello world as a JSON output. So that's fine and good. To make this useful, let's say we have some data that we want to. We're not going to connect it up to a database just for the purposes of to keep things moving quickly here. But because Fast API is built on and plays nice with Pydantic, we actually use Pydantic for some internal data modeling. And Pydantic was already installed with our Fast API. So from Pydantic import, we have base model. And we can then have a class. Let's just say we have a user class. No, let's not do, let's do something different. Let's basketball teams with something, or a team of some kind. Imagine this being public data. Right? We're not going to get into user management or login state or anything like that. We have some data that we would like to share with the world, and we're going to create a backend to serve it and a front end to display it on the web very nicely. So we have a class called team, extends the base model for Pydantic, and then we'll just do, well, we have the name of the team is a string type, and we can leave it at that. And we just have a team that gives a number of strings. This is this basic class implementation. If you've been to this meeting in the past, we've done plenty of things with data classes and these other Python data modeling techniques. And if we got rid of the base model, we could do data class. It's the same sort of idea. This is just saying we're going to have a variable called name, and it is of type string. Normally, this wouldn't really do anything special in Python at runtime, but remember that Fast API and Pydantic do data validation. So when we say that this team.name is type string, if we were to create a team and we gave this an int, it would actually give us an error because it's not type string. It didn't pass validation. And this does it on input as well. If we had an endpoint here to ingest some data, it would run that validation on ingest as well. So by the time that it gets into the code base, we know that it conforms to whatever interface here we have set up. So let's say in addition to names, we can keep a tally of how many wins and losses that they have. And let's say we also can just have a city, and that's a string as well. Nothing crazy. Then we can say that we have some teams where we have a team, and let's say the name is the magic, because rando. And let's say at the beginning of this year, our teams start at 0. In fact, what we can do, if we want to initialize, we can do something like that. So all of our teams start at 0. We got we have our name, we have our city is Orlando, and we can copy this down. We'll just add one more. We'll do the Miami Heat. And I need to add comma. This is just some syntactic sugar, just because it's not going to hurt us. And if we add another line, let's say forget, in the future, then we actually don't update 2 lines. You can take it or leave it. I like to add it whenever possible. But okay, we now have teams. So so we're actually gonna leave that there just because we're gonna add a new route to this. We're going to have a get for our teams. We have an async def get teams, and it doesn't take anything. So we're just going to return teams. That's great. So here's something really interesting that we can do in Python using Pydantic. So we have a team here that's a base. We have a base model. Let's say we also include an ID field, and we'll make it an int. If actually, here's a better way of doing this. So we have our class team. It has our base model there. Yada yada. Okay. Team. I'm actually going to call this team out, and you'll see why in just a second. I'm also going to create another one that is just our team, and it actually extends team out. And we're going to put this ID field right here. What we can do, we have our team. I actually need to give it I'm just going to give it, we got ID 0 and ID 1. Great, what they are now valid teams. Let's go ahead and call our endpoint here teams. Would you look at that? We now have a list. We got name, Magic City, win zeros, ID, so on and so forth. Now let's say we don't want this ID to get out. Imagine this was a user and we didn't want to expose some kind of internal customer ID or anything that the front end of our website doesn't need to know about for either security purposes or just keeping the payload to data that is on a need to know basis, for example. What we can do here with our out, we can return our teams, but we can pass this response model to be team out. And if it's reloaded, if we call this again, type dig, is it response models or response class? I'm forgetting exactly which one this is. I'm actually going to refer to some of my own code for a second, because I've done this plenty of times before, but once it's in place, you forget about it. It is response. Oh, there. Okay, I know in this. So it is response model. So we give it response model. Model, but what I was missing, so I'm on 3.7 right here for because I didn't set up an environment beforehand. So what I actually need to do is do from typing import list, because remember, typing is important when it comes to Pydantic and Fast API. So we're not returning team out, we're returning a list of team out. So now, if we reload this, ta-da, we have the same data, but our ID field has actually been removed. So ID is, we can use an access ID, but as soon as it returns something, it will cast it to the type of list of team out. So that's a really useful feature for, you don't have to do that in your code here, let Fast API handle it for you. And if you're on Python 3.9 or later, you actually don't need that import. You can just do the built-in list, nothing special, but I'm on 3.7 right now. So whoopsie. Anyway, so we got that. And lastly, let's do an app.post. Let's post. We'll do a team. And I think we can do that. Let's actually check our documentation here. So we got path parameters is what we're trying to do here. Yeah, so they just use bracket. And you notice how with Fast API, whatever the variable name you give it inside the bracket is going to be the same that you see here in our function definition. So we got an async def. We're going to do a score team. And it actually takes the name. We'll do string. And we'll also do a query parameter. And you see the query parameters, they exist just here as elements. So we'll do when cast to a bool, and we'll just default it to true. So the score team, we'll give it a name. We will match the name. So we can do for team in teams. Yeah, for team in teams. If team.name equals name, we'll do if when team dot wins plus equals 1, else team dot losses plus equals 1. Not necessarily the most efficient or lovely looking code, but it gets the job done. So now these tallies in here are only going to exist as long as these teams here remain in memory. So every time that we make an update to our code base here, it's going to reload. We just don't have, we're not writing to a database. But while we're here, if we do team and we give it the magic. Oh, actually, silly me, I can't post from the web browser. So let me pull up Insomnia here. And just, yeah, we were using this one for something previously. New request, team score. It is type post. Doesn't send anything, so we got, we'll copy this URL over. Almost done. I just want to show that we have an endpoint that provides us data, and then we can send things to. Actually, while we're here, I'm going to also return, if team.name there. So we're in here. I'm also going to return the team so that we actually have something returned. And because we're doing this, we're also going to add that response model, because let's say we do still just want to exclude that ID from getting to our front end. So now that's updated. We'll go back over here. We can send it, hey, look, we got a win because our win defaulted to true. But if we add a URL parameter, win equals false, well, hey, look, our losses are now going up. Seems like the Magic always got a couple wins to start off the season right, and then goes downhill. Oh, well. The same thing will happen for the Heat. So we put in the Heat, and we get Miami Heat. They have a loss. And just to show that those do clear, if we just reload the application, everything's in memory, can go back to the Magic. Yeah, and our season has been cleared. So that's all we're going to do for our backend. The rest of this is going to be our front end work. So we can this will be I'll have all the code available after the meeting, but we're not going to need to look at our backend code anymore. We've seen that it works. We can get the teams, we can get our specific teams, all of that. So I'm actually going to get rid of that, and we will create another code base where we're going to create our Vue front end. And just reconfigure our setup. Dun, 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 dun. All right. So let's go ahead to our Vue docs. Yeah, Vue.js. Yes, it is. Oh, Vue.js.org. Great. So we have Vue. We're going to look at the newest one as of last winter is Vue 3. So we're going to be building with that. Let's get into our getting started. Make this bigger for everyone to see. Installation. Ta-da. CDN. Yeah, so a prerequisite to this is having Node on your machine, and npm comes with Node. This is the thing I wasn't sure of, the Vue.next. All right, we have an empty repository here. Yay! All the possibilities. We're going to start by installing Vue. Do Vue at next. And let that start chugging. We're going to ignore the single file. Or nah, let's do it anyway. I don't really remember or care what's in here, but I know that I like single file components, and we'll see what that means in a second. Other thing we need to do is get the Vue CLI, because we're going to use this to actually create our project. This is kind of like how what? Django, that's the word I'm looking for. It's kind of similar to Django, how you don't want to start a Django project from scratch, just with you creating all of your code. Django has a CLI tool to build a starting repository for you. Vue is the same way, so we will go ahead and use it. So we have our Vue CLI. Let's take a look at the help so I can remember exactly what the thing is Vue create. There we go. Vue create options and the name. So we're going to do Vue create, and the app name, we're going to be PYORL. And we'll go ahead and start configuring our application here. So we are doing Vue 3. Let that start downloading. It's going to ask us a handful of things. We're going to disable most of it. What we are going to do is, I think it would be very useful to have Vue router in here, and we're going to be using Typescript. There are a bunch of other options that it's going to present us with that are either developer tools or things like Vuex, which is a data storage mechanism that we're not going to have the time to get into. But Vuex is very good. Allows you to keep to store data without actually saving it to your browser's local storage. We have our starter project that our source Oh, okay. I need to look at something. It didn't give me the option to actually put TypeScript in here. Let me look that up. Vue TypeScript setup. I'm sure I just missed a flag. Oh, Vue add TypeScript. Okay, wasn't okay. So we actually can just start here, I suppose. Vue add TypeScript. Involving installing plugin. Class style syntax, yes. We'll see what that is in a second, but it's great. Yes, that. Yes. So that's good. That's going there. Yeah, so to install Vue, we did npm install. Yeah, we did npm install Vue, but to get Vue 3, we did Vue at next, and that is an npm flag to say get the latest version without getting into, well, yeah, is get the latest version. I think if you still do npm install Vue and just that, it will still default to Vue 2 at this point. Okay, so we got that. And everything has been converted from JavaScript to TypeScript. Yay. So main.ts, all that good stuff. We have our template, but just to show that everything is working, we can do npm run serve. And just like we had with our unicorn command on our backend, this will go ahead and compile our TypeScript. TypeScript compiles to JavaScript. And then once it's built, it will go ahead and serve it. We have our localhost 8080, and this is our hello world front end. I'm hoping that in the same way that we added TypeScript, we can also do the Vue router, or it's just router. Maybe it's just router. Okay. That, yes, we'll just use the defaults. Perfect. Okay, so what we have here is downloading, running completion, so on and so forth. Now npm run serve. It's going to recompile our application. And let's go ahead and reload this. We now have internal routing. This is still it's still kind of a single page application. And what I mean by that is if we go into public, this is going to be all of our static server assets. Our index.html for this project is just this. Our entire application gets built up via by Vue's JavaScript and gets inserted right here. So if someone doesn't have JavaScript turned on, they get a message saying that it doesn't work properly without JavaScript. But this is the only HTML that we have here in a standalone file. All of the routing, all of our our application, it's going to be in these .vue files. These are called single file components, meaning that we have our template section, we have our CSS, And in some of these other files, we'll see we also have our own script. They all live inside a single file, unlike React and Angular, where you will have components live, or you will have your HTML, JavaScript, and CSS living in different files. This is really nice, especially getting started, because they're all synced right here. You're not going to have any naming or file system issues for discovering these. And your style here, if you put nav, like this nav a, this router link actually turns into a nav, but this will not be applied to elements that are further up in the pages hierarchy, which is really neat. Anyway, we have our component here. Oh, here's actually we got our hello world example, and this is showing we have our template. So most of this is just boilerplate right here, but we also have our script right here, and this, while it doesn't necessarily look like Python code all that much right now. Hey, we're in the land where indentation doesn't matter. We're in the land of curly braces. We can still see, hey, this is a class. It has a name. Hey, it's extending something, which is, it's inheriting from. So just like we had our class team inherits from base model. Well, we're doing that in JavaScript right now with our Vue frontend. Same thing we had here. So we got this can be given a message, and it is of type string. So that is our hello world. I'm actually going to clear out most of this here because we don't need it. And our page instantly updates, which is very convenient. All right, so let's say we want to display our team data. I'm actually going to leave this hello world component alone. We're going to create a new one, and we're going to put it in a new route in our nav bar. Got our views. We're going to create a new view. We're going to call this teams.view. And it has a template tag. And we're just going to put a very simple HTML here. We got our section, we got our div. Always close your tags. And we're just going to give it a title called just team view, because we're being super original. And I'm not going to write, we're not going to get into script it just yet. Let's add this to our router here. And I'm not going to get into this. This is a lazy loading technique if you have a lot of routes. We're just going to look at what we have right here. So these routes, we're going to add a new one for teams, and the title is teams. And now we have to import our component, our view right here, teams.view. So we're going to import teams from. So they're actually doing relative imports. Another thing you can do with Vue, and I think other front ends as well, you can use @ which refers to the top level of your source folder. So we can do @ views teams.view, and our component here is with our teams that we've imported. And now so we can do this. We can go to teams in our address bar here. It's not doing anything yet. Oh, I think but let's also go into our app.view here. We'll copy this. This nav this is our nav here. We can see home, about. We can add a link to our teams and our teams view right there, and we'll give it the title teams. And for consistency, let's go ahead and add another bar. We update that. And I'm actually going to force reload all of our content. On a Mac, that is Option Command E and then Command R. Just throwing that out there. That actually, it purges the cache of your local website. And if you're doing localhost on here, sometimes you need it. But we've successfully added our team view. Ta-da, ta-da. So we can just go back and forth between these. But remember, it's kind of a single page application because all of this is still just running as JavaScript inside of this one HTML file. Kind of crazy. Are there any questions so far? Because I know this is a lot, and it's kind of an intro to Vue, and I'm not really, I don't expect anyone here to be a JavaScript developer. I'm not claiming I'm one either. I will keep my eye for the chat window, but moving on. So we now have a team page right here that just has team view on it. Okay, did get a chat in. Where did the router index.ts come from? Yeah, so our this whole thing that we didn't really create this. If I go ahead and comment this out and go all the way back here, it wasn't that many commands ago. We let the CLI, the Vue CLI, build this boilerplate for us. We created the code, opened it, so we installed Vue as well as the Vue CLI. Yeah, okay. We created an application. We then added TypeScript to it. And what this did, it automatically updated all of our files to TypeScript. And then for the router, we then just did Vue add router, and it added our router here. It updated our app.vue, especially when a project is getting started and things haven't been customized too much. You can keep adding and adding and adding, and it updates your template for you. And then all you need to do is npm run serve, and your modified app just works. it's pretty great. Anyway, so yeah, now we have a website. We can go between. We've seen how to add routes into our application and then update our nav bar. Now, let's use our backend. I just want to make sure that it's still running. I don't think I quit it. Yeah, so we're just, it is listening on localhost 8000. Perfect. Before we start up the server again, let's add the Axios library. Axios is the equivalent of the requests library in Python. So this gives us, we can do axios.get, post, put, delete, all that good stuff. And it is, and as you'll see, we can use async and wait with it, which is really great. We'll install Axios. While that is working, we're going to add a new component. We're going to call this a team list. And it's going to have a template, but we'll actually fill that in a little later. It has a script, but in order to tell the compiler that this is a TypeScript, we also have to input lang equals ts. And we close our script tag there. Now, we're using something called Vue class components. And just to show you what it looks like without class components, if Yeah, so we have, this is their getting started with Vue, and you'll see that this counter, we're inside of our script component, is creating a constant called counter, and it is an object which behaves similarly to a Python dictionary. But you see that it also can have functions. So it's kind of like a class, but also it's an interesting it's an interesting dichotomy comparing it to a Python dictionary, because it straddles the line between a dictionary and a class implementation. But what we can do in TypeScript is we can actually use classes that, just natively. What we need to do that, what we need in order to do that is we need to import this options and view from Vue class component. First thing we're going to do, we're going to call, we have our options, and we're just going to give it an empty object for the time being. And it's a decorator. We have decorators in Python. It just means that this is a thing that's going to take whatever falls after it and modify it in place. So first thing, export. If you're not familiar with JavaScript and TypeScript, you can't, if you want to expose something to be imported by another part of your code base, you need to explicitly mark it as an export. TypeScript actually allows you to export multiple things without bundling everything up at the end, which is great. This default keyword means that you don't have to put it in these angle brackets like you see here. You can just, this is actually what we did in our router here. This import teams from Vue. This is a export default. And if we didn't default it, then you would have to do this. It's just kind of a space saver in other things. And it also means that the importing file can rename it whatever they want, but you can also only have one default per file. Nothing that really is going to impact us now, but these are keywords that Python doesn't have. Finally, we have a keyword that Python does have, class. Then we have our class name here, which is our team list, and then extends, it inherits from our imported Vue class component. And then we have our curly braces. That's all we have right now. But this technically will import. It's not showing anything, but this will import. Now let's say we have, we're going to have some teams, but we can't do this. We want to do better than this. Technically we can do it. I think it will give us a compiler warning saying you really shouldn't. But what we can do is if we go back over here and reference this team out, this is what the server is going to return to us, because we explicitly told it to not send over this ID. So what we can do over here is we can actually convert, we know what data we're going to get back, yeah? So we can actually use this code. Clearly not as is, we're getting a bunch of warnings, but rather than creating a class implementation for this, because we're in TypeScript, we can actually use something called an interface. And what an interface does is it allows us to tell TypeScript, I'm going to get in some data as an object, or in Python terms, in this case, we're going to get a dictionary in. And it should have the following elements with the following types. So we just need to update these to their TypeScript equivalents. And ta-da, we now have an interface. This is saying this is how the data is formatted that we're going to read in to this class component. So now, rather than teams being some objects, it's actually going, and rather than team out, we're just going to call this team because that's all it is. And then to say we have a list of teams, all we do is we add some square brackets to the end, and this is a list of teams. So before we actually use Axios, let's just show that we can render things properly. We can do teams, blah, 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 and let's actually just instantiate this with a team. We got name equals magic. Yeah, I think this is just complaining that it doesn't have. Oh, I know what's going on. I got my syntax confused. We got team there, and we're going to. So it's of that type. Remember, we don't interfaces are not classes. We don't instantiate them. We're just going to pass it. I can even make this a little more succinct. Name magic. We got city of Orlando. Wins, let's say 2. And losses 5. And all of our red bars disappear. All right, finally, let's look at our template. Because we've instantiated a team list, and we have some data here that is going to be created with this data. Now we need to actually tell it how to display this information. So we're going to wrap everything in a div representing this component. Now this is an unordered list, so UK. So we have a UL element, and we close our element there. And inside of a list, we use li for list items. And just to keep, we'll just close it right there for the time being. Here's where this is where the power of Vue really starts coming into play, because Vue, like these other front-end JavaScript frameworks, allows you to treat your templates just like they are code with some special keywords here. So we can do Vue for, and we're going to do team in teams, and teams represents our teams parameter here in our class component. We also need to give it a key, and I believe the syntax is key team.name. Yes, that's how it is. Then inside of our list element, we can do let's have a bold for the team name. If you've used Jinja before, this is going to look very familiar. We can access our team, and because we have an interface on it, we can then do name, because it knows the kind of data that we're supposed to have as part of a team. We're going to close out this bold. We're going to give it, just being silly now, we're going to give it a small. Team.city. We close our small. And we'll just do team.wins, give it a slash, and then team.losses. And that is our list element. Simple as that. Now that we have our team list component here, we can go into our teams view. And now that we need to put something into this view here, now we need to create the script. Yeah, okay. So here's that, view.extend. This is not the syntax that we're using here. We're going to import our options in view again from view class component. Just like we did before, we got options. We need to export default class teams extends view. Although we're not actually going to do anything with it right now. We do, however, need to use the data that we're given this options decorator. And another nice thing with VS Code here is not only it knows that options takes an interface with all of these types, so it can actually provide us tooltips for these types that it knows can be there, and components is one of them. Components is itself another one of these objects, and component refers to any of these over here, any other view component that we can import and then want to use up in our template. So first we need to import it, just like we did with the view in our router. And it's an exported default. So it's the team list from, and we'll do this, is at components dot team list. Why I don't like that. Cannot find module. Interesting. I don't know. What don't you like about that? I am unsure, actually. Let's just see what happens. It should work. It shouldn't even need view in there. Yeah, maybe it does. Anyway, team list. So now that it's in our components list, we can put it up here simply by doing team list, uppercase or lowercase. Let's go ahead and npm run serve. Yeah, why are you complaining about that? Okay, so that one was using .view, this one, yeah. That's not right. Okay. The syntax highlighting just doesn't want to work right now. Anyway, back over on our view over here. Let's force reload this. We now have our team in here. Da. That's pretty neat. We're not looking at any kind of formatting right now. If we have time, we can come back to it. But any questions at this point? We're going to go into actually reading data in from our backend very quickly in our component here. Yeah. Okay, going into our team list. So rather than taking in static data, we want to read things in from our backend. So we're going to add a method to this class component. Now, Vue uses a handful of built-in methods to manage lifecycle. And the one we're looking for right now is mounted. So when it appears on the screen, it's going to call mounted. It returns nothing, so we actually call void on there. And finally, we're going to import star as Axios from Axios. All right. So once this component is mounted onto here, we're going to call axios.get, and okay, so why Axios versus fetch? No reason, not really. I've used Axios before, so just comfortable. Fetch is another alternative. It's kind of like I compared Axios to requests earlier. I actually use HTTPS personally because I have both sync and async. It's whichever one you're most comfortable with. So let's quickly run over here to our Axios documentation. That's not Axios documentation, is it? Ta-da, ta-da. Okay, installed Axios, all that good stuff. Axios API. Okay, I think I remember what we were doing. Custom methods. Actually, let's do something just a little bit different. Let's do an Axios instance, because this is going to be more interesting for what you actually want to use. And actually, let's create a util.ts, just being lazy. We can do the same thing, import star as Axios from our Axios library. We're actually doing here, maybe not. Axios Typescript. I'm forgetting what the import is actually supposed to look like. The Axios instance. Or I can just pop over into that other that reference that I had from earlier. Count front end. Source was doing the services API. Okay, just import Axios from Axios. I'm just going to, okay, so we got create, all that good stuff. So import Axios from Axios. So here's the interesting thing about using an instance rather than just using it. We can set our base URL already here, as well as any headers that we want to include by default. So let's go ahead and put our base URL. All we need to do is we have a localhost at 8,000. Refers to our API, and that's it. So now in our team list, rather than importing Axios, we can import. Let's do export fonts, say API. And I personally hate all instances of semicolons using Typescript, but that is my own opinion. So we can import API from our at util. Yes. And rather than Axios.get, we can do API.get. And then rather we don't need, since we have our base URL set to our localhost, we actually don't need to do anything more. Yes, I am wrong. We need to do teams because we're pulling down the teams. And just want to double check. Yes, we do have that closing backslash. So okay, we got API to get teams, and we can even do this. We can say, hey, just so you know, on a successful request, you're going to get a list of team interfaces. So we can automatically cast that information for us, which is really convenient. Then, if we, I don't remember like if like public async methods work on there, but we can also use them, and we're going to do some ES6 syntax here, where we're going to use closure. This is similar to a lambda in Python. The syntax in that other languages have for closures is much better than Python, in my opinion, especially if you need multi-lines. And considering up until, really until they introduced async and await in JavaScript, JavaScript is still a whole lot of callback hell from time to time. And so it was really nice that it has better syntax for closures. Anyway, so the first thing that then gets is a closure. And we're saying we're going to receive teams. And all we need to do, and actually, I can just do that. We can do this.teams. So when a successful call is made, let's get the teams. And then if we give it something else, we can actually have it print out any errors that it encounters for our development purposes. Ta-da! Oh, this.teams equals teams. There we go. So assuming it is missing following properties type, blah, 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 blah. Oh, I know why. It's not returning that. I had some syntax confused. Equals, it's a response dot data is cast at type list of team. Let's see, no more errors. So let's see if this works. If we reload the page and we get 2 entries, we know we're successful. Oh, I also need to, let's get rid of our static data too. It's still instantiated with an empty list. And if we're getting any errors, they'll pop up in our console. Syntax error, string did not match the expected pattern. Okay, so this is an issue with our Axios.
A few moments later.
Okay, so there's something going in. Okay, I need to, we need to add origin. So there's something going on with the base URL. I don't see anything that is, yes, I'm an idiot. There's a space in there. Thank goodness for post editing. Okay, so there is one thing we need to do. We need to add access control headers to our backend. And I'm just going to pull up another bit of reference code very quickly. Great thing about GitHub is I can always refer back to things that I know I've done before. Okay, so we actually had some middleware shenanigans going on here. So we got, okay, it's actually perfect. It's actually just built in. So I don't need to do another install. So we can do from Starlet, which Fast API is built on top of. Import, is it cores middle? Yeah. Starlet.middleware.cores. Starlet.middleware.cores. Cores middleware, and then we say anyone can call this website. Ta-da! So our backend reloads. Finally, if oh, I saved it, so we need to go back into team view and finally get rid of this. And let's actually just see what pops in. Okay, the status 200. We have our teams. Yay! It's finally working. Okay. We'll go ahead and revert these changes just a little bit, but we did get to see a little bit of, hey, we got async and await. This looks like Python code, kind of. Yay. So to move things back, because we love clean looking code, we got API.get, and we're going to tell it again that this we are expecting things to come in as a list of teams. Okay. Actually, let's just keep it as is, because that looks pretty clear as far as I'm concerned. So we're getting the response back, and we can look at things like response dot, or we can get the status code and all that other good stuff from it. And then in our code down here, well, if it's successful, then we just take the teams that it returns, we assign it to our class component, and then it automatically will refresh our template, and ta-da, it gets displayed on our website. Whew. Okay. Now, while we're not reusing code at this point because we're using a for loop, let's say we wanted to add a button to here. So this, as it's displayed right now, it could be you go to ESPN.com or something, and if you are just a viewer of it, you'll just see, hey, here are the teams and here are their wins and losses. But if we're logged in as an admin user, let's say we want to change the stats on this board. Well, if we can add two buttons to say, increase the win counter, increase the loss counter. Well, now we actually need things to handle those button clicks. This sounds like a perfect opportunity to replace this code right here with its own component. We can go ahead and do that. We got our team list. We're going to do a team row as a new component. And just like we've done before, we have our template. We're going to create a div around everything because some things break in Vue if there isn't some kind of outside container of some variety with these. We could change this to list item instead. That would make more sense, seeing as all seeing with the other stuff that we're doing. And then over here, we need to add a component like we did before. So now that we have a team row, we first need to import. We do import team row from our components and team row.view. We add it to our components in our view component, our class component here. So we got team row, and now we can put team row, and then we just close it immediately, save it, Oh, so yeah, we did it. Ta-da! Here's the thing. Our team row is not completed yet. We just copied the code. What we need to do is to pass this team into this component so that our component knows what team it's supposed to be displaying. From here, we can do something called vbind. Vbind. We're gonna say team equals team here. Now in our team row, we know that it's going to have a team of some variety, but we don't know what that looks like just yet. And to clean things up just a little bit, now that we have multiple components, let's add a models folder so we can put our team in there. Team.typescript. So this is just a TypeScript file. We're going to copy this interface over to here. Whoops. Team. And because we want to use it in other things, we need to export it. Back in our team list, we still want to reference it. So we will import team from our models. And we're going to do the same thing over in our row. So we first need to create our script. Lang equals ts script. There. We close our script. And we'll go ahead and import team. Also import our Vue stuff like we've done with all of our files so far. We do our options, export default class team row extends Vue. All good stuff so far. Now we have to put there. So this is a class component, but you're seeing we extend Vue to tell Vue that we need to be given a team. That's a property. And just like we had components in this before, we have props. And it takes a team. Here is a team, got team. I think it may break on me if I do this, but we'll see. We'll see. And then down here in our actual class component, we can do team, but not really. Because we don't give this a default value, and because TypeScript is Vue is having to play with TypeScript, we actually just need to add a exclamation sign here. It's overriding the the initial checks, just saying, hey, this will be here when we instantiate this class. Just trust us. Essentially, what's going on there. And I think there's this other thing. If we take in an interface, an object as an interface in TypeScript, well, not TypeScript, Vue, we also need to do this prop type. Or yeah, I think it's prop type. We'll go back and check this just for my own sanity's sake. Components. So we got notification row. Yeah, it is prop type from Vue. From Vue, and then it's so we got there's this wonky syntax here, but it does work. So it says it is an object, But when Vue gives it to us, we're going to cast it to the interface team. And it looks wonky. It does work. So I think if we save this as is, it may just work. It does work. Yay! I don't know why Babel is getting confused over these. Anyway, it does work. So we've successfully taken, we've loaded teams from our backend, and we can verify that by looking at our logs. We've called our teams endpoint a number of times. We've taken that, we have a list where we are iterating through them and passing the team to its own team row. And now to add buttons, we can just add some buttons. So, hey, look, we got a button. And we do add when, closer button. And then we can do add loss. And if we save this component, we have some buttons again. They don't do anything yet because we haven't connected them, but they're there. Now, these buttons are supposed to update some data on this class. So we create some new methods on here. We can do, let's see, well, we can, you know, let's say add score. And then when is a Boolean type. Doesn't return anything. Well, we can do if when this dot team, like, you shouldn't actually, this isn't going to work. I'm just going to tell you that right now. We can do team.when. I think we can just do ++ there, just to increment it in place. We do this dot team dot losses ++ wins. And then to connect this to a button, we can do at click, we're going to run add score. If it's a win, well, that's the default. And when it's clicked, we're going to add score false. Now, like I said, this isn't going to work. We should get a nasty error. Didn't get a nasty error. Oops. Oh, because I didn't give it anything. So actually, if you don't give it something in JavaScript, TypeScript, it's undefined, which evaluates to false. So if I want to fix this, well, just as is, we can add true there. Reload it, add when, all that good stuff. And I thought it shouldn't work. I guess it does. But you'll notice that every time we reload this page, it's clearing because we're not actually updating any information on the server yet. Well, we created an endpoint to update the win and loss scores on our website. Let's just have the button do that. So rather than updating things locally, now we could update locally and push to the server, but there could be some issues with that. What we really want to do is not update the data locally. We want to do on button click, call the web server, and then tell it to update the team list with the new updated scores. So in order to do that, we need to pull in our API from before. We can do import API from that util that we had earlier. And we can do API, it's a post call. And we're actually just going to ignore the data that comes back from it. API.post, it was team slash, and it was this dot team dot name to get to it. And then when we get a response back, because we don't care what the response is, we're going to tell our parent to reload its data. And the way that we do this is by using emits. It's like it's kind of like a callback mechanism. So emit, and we say that we want to emit a reload command. Now here's so we got so this is TypeScript complaining that we had a thing in there that wasn't used. Yeah. So actually no, we do want to do this. We want teams up there. That's okay. So we're post. We're not sending any payload, and then for options, it's parameters. Let's quickly look. Axios post. It's not form data. We're looking for URL params. Okay, it is just params. Oh, so these imports are confusing my tooltips. Yeah. Okay, params, and we're going to say when is when. Actually, we can just use this syntax. We don't have this in Python, and we've been using it this whole time with our class components. If you imagine this is a dictionary, if you give it just the parameter or the variable when, this actually evaluates to this. It's a shorthand for it, in case you see that anywhere. It's convenient, but yeah, we don't have it in Python. All right. The last thing that we need to do here is we also need to tell Vue that we actually emit something. So we emit reload, and we need to tell Vue that this component emits reload. That's all we need to do here, barring any kind of debugging. Back in our team list, our team row up here. Oh, actually, we can just do. Actually, I'm curious if it will let me do this. So just like we had that @click, run this thing on click, that emit works on our component. So we have this thing emits reload, and conveniently, the only thing that our mounted method is doing right now is just reloading the data. So we may just be able to call mounted. This may not work. I may need to move it to its own function, but let's see what happens. Force reload. We add a win. Okay. Mounted is not a function. Okay, yeah, so let's go ahead. We're going to create a new one. We're going to call it, let's say reload. Doesn't return anything. And we're just going to move this into here. We don't duplicate any code. And when it's mounted, we're going to have it call reload. And when this gets run, we're going to have it call reload the page. But you see that on our last call, it actually did update our server. We told it that we needed another win. Well, we needed 2 wins. hey, my Miami Heat lost and they won another game, Magic lost. And these are all happening server side. If I reload this page, they're all still there. And back on our server, you see that we have some posts coming in and some reloading the page with our gets. And that's kind of it. We went 15 minutes over what we normally do, but think about everything that just got built here. Built an entire backend with Fast API to store team data. And then the core of what we talked about today, we built a very basic but fully functional website with Vue that hooks and talks 2 ways with our backend. So, yay. Vue mixed with TypeScript it can be interesting because not all Node libraries have really good, robust TypeScript support. But when you get it working, it feels more like Python than just straight JavaScript. And I've been finding this very comfortable for some projects that I've had recently, and I'm very happy to share it with everyone. If there are any final questions, let me know. We went over a lot. And of course, this recording will be available tomorrow for anyone who wants to review, as well as the code being on our GitHub page. I've been going to mine so often, but we actually have GitHub Orlando Python. And the code for this repository will be up here tomorrow.